America, we stand for freedom. Though freedom is never really free, we yearn and strive for government protecting our liberty.
Hello and welcome to Your Right to Know. My name is Andrew Couture and I will be your host today with a co-host, Mary Lotze. And today we have a special guest, Michael King. He's the Director of Community Alliance for the Mass Family Institute. How are you doing, Mike?
Good. Thank you so much for having me, Andrew.
So before we begin, can you please explain your organization and about the Massachusetts Family Institute?
Absolutely. So Massachusetts Family Institute has been in Massachusetts for 25 years, and our main mission is to strengthen and protect the family in Massachusetts. And we do that through a lot of public policy. So we're down at the State House a lot, and we're looking at, every two-year legislative process, there's about 6,000 bills that are offered. And we rummage through those and see which ones we're concerned about in terms of what are some that are concerning to our family values that we value at Massachusetts Family Institute.
And what are some of those values?
So the three main values are natural marriage, religious liberties, and the sanctity of life.
And if somebody wants to get involved in the Mass Family Institute?
Absolutely. They can find us right online at mafamily.org.
So tonight we're going to limit our topic to Recreational Marijuana Action Plan, which is a community and fact-based bipartisan citizens initiative to opt out of recreational pot shops in local cities and towns. In 2012, Massachusetts voters passed a law that developed medical marijuana program in Massachusetts. Many felt that this was going to be a slippery slope. For those troubled with this slippery slope argument, they have a right to be concerned because in November 2016, the voters in Mass supported a vote of 53.6 to 46.3 to allow recreational use in Massachusetts. Can you please describe the law that was passed based on voter support in November of 2016?
Yeah, I think that, even though this law was passed in last November, I think a lot of voters are having some buyer's remorse over, a lot of them didn't really understand exactly what they were getting themselves into. And as you mentioned, we already had medical marijuana that was allowed under law. And we also had, if you had an ounce of marijuana, usually you would go to jail. Well, now the new law was that you would be fined and you wouldn't go to jail. So, these were really the two main concerns that you kept hearing coming up, right? The going to jail concern and the medical marijuana that, we should have that for people that are, suffering from certain cerebral or other, concerns that they would have. So those were already on the books. And now we had the recreational marijuana. And I don't think people really understood that this was a completely money-driven from the marijuana industry to come into Massachusetts.
Now, since other people believe that once they voted this law in November of 2016, pot shops would appear on Main Street overnight.
Yeah.
Now, why has the recreational marijuana law still not been implemented fully?
Yeah, I guess they thought that pot shops would be popping up. But there was I guess a moratorium put into the actual question to begin with that we wouldn't have retail shops in Massachusetts starting until January of 2018, and then I think our legislators took a closer look at it and still are taking a closer look at it because the law has not been clearly defined as of yet. I think they're looking to the summer of 2018 or 2017 to finalize the law. But I did see that some of our legislators are working towards getting it pushed to July of 2018 to when pot shops, retail shops can be open for business.
Now, recreational marijuana, or question number 4, which was on the ballot in 2016, really brought out many people to vote on this one issue. In fact, some came out to vote who didn't even vote in the presidential election. Yet there was a great deal of confusion about the law. Governor Charlie Baker, Attorney General Maura Healey, State Senator Robert DeLeo, and even Boston Mayor Marty Walsh were very vocal about against the ballot question number 4. They did not want recreational marijuana to become law. So, I mean, their support for recreational marijuana was due in part to the information they were receiving from fact-finding trip, which the legislatures went to the state of Colorado. What did the Colorado results show?
Yeah, the Colorado results showed many things, and to your point of this being a bipartisan issue, I can't think of an issue that is more bipartisan than the marijuana issue. You know, I think of the 200 legislators, senators and representatives combined at the State House, I think about 12 of them actually came out vocally and said that they were for recreational marijuana. So, it is an incredible bipartisan issue. And then, as you mentioned, I was at a press conference in November, or maybe the end of October of 2016, right before we voted on this issue. And, Governor Baker was there. Mayor Walsh was there. Cardinal O'Malley was there. Many of our faith leaders were there. Mayor Walsh said that if there was any question that he could be against in his entire political career, it would be to vote no on question 4. But obviously we saw that this was obviously voted for. But in terms of political, I mean, this, you're not sacrificing political capital as a politician to get involved. So when they went to Colorado, I think we'll have a slide on this, that they found there's more retail and medical pot shops in Colorado than McDonald's and Starbucks combined. Now,
You have a great PowerPoint presentation, some of which we'll be showing on our show today. But getting back to what we were talking about, do people have the right to be nervous about open and widespread use of recreational marijuana?
Absolutely. There's statistics that show as you legalize a drug, you increase the usage of that drug exponentially. And I think later too we'll talk more about just the use of drugs in our younger people. There's a lot of debate about, what is the minimum age that you can start using marijuana. And some of our legislators are pushing for 25, some are pushing for 21. And studies show that the brain does not fully develop until you're about 25 years of age. So clearly with a drug like marijuana that does, clinical studies show that there is just a horrible effect on the brain. As you dope, your brain, you'll find that many people will go into depression if they use it too often. So that, and the THC levels are just, the 70s marijuana is not today's marijuana. It is so much more concentrated. You could take a bite of a brownie and be stoned, as opposed to eating the whole brownie. So there's definitely concerns about this drug.
Okay. Well, recreational marijuana is a law in Massachusetts. Yeah. However, it seems like now, after the election is over, residents of cities and towns in the Commonwealth are becoming a bit antsy regarding the possible proliferation of pot shops in the cities and towns. Yeah. Based on other states' experience, you mentioned something that there are actual more pot shops than McDonald's or Starbucks combined. Yeah. Can you discuss the law, how it's currently written, and explain how cities and towns can opt out in order to stop the recreational marijuana shops?
Yeah, as you look at this law, you understand just how manipulative the marijuana industry has been. They learned their lesson in Colorado, where in Colorado, when the state had agreed to vote yes for pot, you had to opt out as a county, okay? I'm sorry, you had to opt in as a county, okay? In Massachusetts, you're forced to opt out. So there were 90 towns out of the 351 towns in Massachusetts that voted against marijuana back in November. But those 90 towns now have to opt out of marijuana because they've been automatically opted in with all the other towns that voted for it. So, you know, in Colorado, I think 25 to 30% of the counties have you can have retail pot shops in those counties because they had to go through the rigoram of opting in, okay? So in Massachusetts, every town and city is open for business unless you opt out. So, you know, there's over 76 towns and cities so far, and I believe the number's probably more, that have started this opt-out process. And, you know, towns like the town of Westboro, for example, was the first town in Massachusetts to successfully opt out. And they did that through passing a general zoning bylaw, a general bylaw, a zoning bylaw, took a vote of the voters as well. And then other towns, of course, are doing the moratoriums. So it's a lot of information to throw at you. I mean, we've put together an action plan that people can email me, and I'm happy to send them an action plan to educate their town selectman or their city council on how they can opt out.
One of the things I would like to make clear to our viewers as we go forward is that we are talking about recreational marijuana.
Correct.
And opting out of recreational marijuana and not the medical marijuana, because there's so many people who immediately, when you talk about or bring up the subject of reducing or changing anything to do with the recreational marijuana, immediately they hearken stories of ill children and adults that need therapy and treatment to make them feel better. So I just want to make that very clear. This is recreational marijuana only, and recreational marijuana is law in Massachusetts. It just hasn't been fully implemented yet. Now, so as we talk about a ban or a moratorium, could you explain the difference between an opt-out marijuana ban and an opt-out marijuana or moratorium? And if your city or town, which Fitchburg did, we voted in November in the city of Fitchburg, 56.7% to 43.3%. We came out in favor of marijuana, recreational marijuana. Could we in Fitchburg still look to putting in a ban and or moratorium or both?
Absolutely, yeah. And so the moratorium is what is really advised to every town and city as a first step, right? So we asked that they do a moratorium for 18 to 24 months. And it buys them time because really you need to work within the calendar year of your town or city when they go to vote in their municipalities or in their cities. And usually that happens in the fall or in the spring. So you would have so the moratorium is just buying you time to you know, organize and kind of get the vote out because you're going to want to do a vote of the voters, and then you're going to want to, like I said, do a general bylaw and a zoning bylaw, and then on top of that, the moratorium to buy you time. So it is a bit of a process. Westboro has really been the precedent, and you know, our action plan is based on what just 4 moms did in the town of Westboro to organize. I mean, 4 moms, you know, put this wealth of information together. So we've done all the research in how to do it. We just need people that are motivated because, you know, you're concerned about especially the youth in your town or city that are gonna, you know, get access to this drug, and that you can go to your town selectman, go to your city council and educate them, you know, with this particular action plan.
So it really was a grassroots effort.
Absolutely.
When you say 4 mothers. Now, I don't know if we put it up before, but I'd just like to, if we have not put it up yet, the slide on Colorado's experience with youth. And I know it might be coming up a little later, but the marijuana industry is really geared towards going after youth.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, statistics show that it is the youth that use drugs the most, and we're talking about under 21 pretty much. And so for the industry to say, oh, this is not going to affect young people, and I mean there was a billboard I was looking, someone sent me a picture, they were on the Pike, and they saw a billboard that says, since legalizing marijuana in 2011, Colorado has had no increase in youth marijuana usage. It's an outright lie. I mean, there's statistics from 2013, 2014 that showed that Colorado had the biggest percentage of youth between the age of 12 and 17 that had used marijuana in the past month. And how can they say that when we'll probably show a picture on the program, when they market it as Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and gummy bears and Almond Joys and, different ways, Swedish Fish, right? You're seeing the slide here. This is a way that it is being commercialized. So for there to be a billboard on the Mass Pike that says there's been no increase in usage with the youth, I don't know. Are they defining youth as 30-somethings or not? Sorry, youth as 5-year-olds? Right. I mean, we know that youth are 12 to 17-year-olds or what have you, and the usage has just scarily increased.
I want to actually go for a moment in a different direction and talk a little bit about Fitchburg specifically, because in the city of Fitchburg, we're a very depressed city. We have had a jobs problem here. And so we have a lot of old factory buildings that have been gone to allow to go derelict. The marijuana industry, as an industry, not pot shops, but the industry has come in and proposed to take over a lot of these old buildings and make them 24/7 large marijuana growing facilities. Now, the city as a whole and the residents look to that to be a good thing. We're looking at it as using some of our derelict buildings, putting taxes back into the economy, some jobs, and we're looking at a new industry, to the point even that North Central Massachusetts could potentially become the pot industrial capital in Massachusetts, or maybe even in New England. How does the Mass Family Institute or at all feel about that? I know it's currently justified that the growing facilities are feeding into only the medical marijuana market.
Well, I guess I would start by saying, don't we have an opioid issue already in our towns and cities, right, with heroin? And so this just exasperates, and the industry will tell you this is not a gateway drug, but clearly when you talk to people that have used drugs, that many times that they get into drugs, it is through marijuana. So, I think that we can be a little more creative in how we increase business in Fitchburg or other central Massachusetts cities and towns. And I also think about just the income inequality. This is going to be another industry that is going to, make the wealthy wealthy and the poor, addicted to drugs. And when you become addicted to drugs, it's not like you're going to go out and get another job. I was talking to a guy that runs a manufacturing business, and he was saying that this is a huge threat to the manufacturing field because pot stays in your system for up to 30 days, as some studies show. So as you know, in the trades, you have to get a drug test. Well, let's say you smoke pot 30 days ago, and you go and you go for your interview and you have to take a drug test, and maybe you forgot that you smoked it 30 days ago, and it's still in your bloodstream. Well, then you can't qualify for that job. And so he was saying, as a employer of the trades, where we already have a shortage of trades, right? I mean, when's the last time you tried to call a plumber and electrician and have them come that day, right? There's just not as many tradesmen available today. So to even more limit that industry is not a wise decision.
Did the law that we passed in November speak to that at all, in drug testing, now that it's going to be legal. Did they speak at all to now stopping drug testing?
Yeah, I'm
or
not
is this all part of the
Well-
why they've gone to July 2018 to work some of these things out?
Yeah, no, I mean, you still have to get it. That's always been, that you have to have a drug test for any job that you take. So I don't think that the industry is trying to, include that or disclude that. So yeah, but I think that they've put an extension to when pot shops can open because the state needs more time to develop its strategy in regard to the law. And I'll also talk about the tax revenues. Studies have shown in Colorado that they thought they were going to have this windfall of cash from taxes. And I think that the tax rate is somewhere in the 30% range or something of that nature. It's very high. And in Massachusetts, I believe it's currently like 12%. So, when you look at the incentive for towns and cities to get involved from a tax standpoint, and even like the regulation of recreational marijuana in Colorado is not what they thought it would be as well. So, and there's a huge black market too that you can't regulate.
It's a reality that the more you tax, the more the black market is going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just growing, there's a stipulation in this law that you can grow up to 6 plants in your house as an individual and 12 plants in your house if there's 2 individuals, but no more than 12 plants. And the value on the street of these plants is anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 a plant. Okay, and technically, according to the law, you can only gift this to people. You can't make this like a business. Okay. But you're going to tell me that people...
It becomes a cash industry.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And
I'm not going to give you my credit card to purchase your...
Absolutely.
Your weed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now,
Go ahead.
Ironically, many smaller towns, some of the elite bedroom communities of Boston's suburbia, they're becoming very active in getting grassroots community support to ban opening pot shops in their community. In fact, they want Boston to be the hub for buying marijuana simply because it's belief that vices should be in the cities alone and not in the lovely, frequently wealthy suburbia.
Yeah.
Now, this is a hallmark of the NIMBY movement, not in my backyard. For those who were so eager to have recreational marijuana, why are they now backing off having the pot shops in their communities?
Well, I guess I would question if these towns and cities, especially in the suburbs outside the cities, really knew what they were getting themselves into and were as eager as maybe we thought they were. I think the industry would make it seem like people were very eager because obviously they have a profit to make. But I was looking at the Boston Herald last week, and there was this article about Mayor Walsh and how he is reprimanding these towns and cities that have already opted out, like the town of Westboro, and saying, how dare you, right? The state has agreed to this. And, back in November, it was Mayor Walsh that was saying, if there's any question that I would ever vote against, it would be vote no on 4. So a complete flip-flop on this issue. And, I would think he should be encouraging towns and cities to have their right to opt out. And now you have this kind of struggle between municipalities and the state, right? And we know it's already federally illegal. But, I think that if we look at Maura Healey and Governor Baker, I don't think there's going to be a struggle from the state end. I think probably towns and cities are probably going to experience more with the industry coming after them, perhaps. And that's why we talk about doing a approach that involves 4 things, right? The moratorium, the general bylaw, the zoning bylaw, and the vote of the voters. And if we look to Westboro, it was 80% of the voters when they came out to the town election voted against it. Recreational marijuana. And then when it came to the zoning and the general bylaws, it was 87% and 88%. So clearly, when it was taken on a local level and people had an opportunity to be educated and say, wait a minute, this is being marketed to 12 and 17-year-olds, then they're like, we don't want this in our town.
What kind of support has the Mass Family Institute received from politicians or from Beacon Hill? Governor Baker, or this is a big industry you're fighting against. This is a $1 billion industry, like you said before. what kind of support are you as an organization getting?
I think we're just starting to see the support because it is still relatively new. The legislators are still trying to develop this law. I think Governor Baker has called for a law by the summer of 2017. But I did just 2 days ago, I got a call from one of our representatives in the South Shore. And this representative is very eager. I gave them one of our action plans that we put together, and they want to take it to their town selectmen and their city council and start the process. And there was also another one in the North Shore, just outside of Boston, that is doing the same thing.
Now, I know we could go on all day because we have so many things that we could talk about, but we are drawing to a close. So what I'd like to have you do, Mike, is talk about specifics. What could we as cities and towns, this is going to go out to many cities and towns, what could we do to help your plan and not have marijuana in our towns?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot we can do. And it's going to take an effort to get educated. But like I said, we've done that through putting together an action plan that anybody that emails me, I will be more than happy to send you this action plan. There's a website too that's been put together by the 4 moms in Westboro that has an incredible wealth of information. So we have done all the research. We just need people to go and take this to their town selectmen if they live in a town, or take it to their city council if they live in a city like Fitchburg. But as I mentioned, it's a 4 process. Pass the moratorium first, right? Then work for a vote of the voters, especially in towns. There's probably going to be a requirement to do a vote of the voters. And like I said, in Westboro, it was 80% of the voters that had voted to opt out. And then you're going to have these zoning bylaw and general bylaw on your town warrant. And again, your town selectmen know all about this whole process. And all you need to do really is just deliver this to them and say, hey, there's enough of people concerned about recreational marijuana in Fitchburg or Leominster or Lunenburg or Sterling or any of these surrounding towns, to opt out.
And you're willing to go out and meet with any groups?
Absolutely.
Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, church groups,
Absolutely.
or whatever?
Yep, and we have the experts too from the town of Westboro that are very knowledgeable, and they are willing to go out as well.
Believe it or not, we have to wrap up. Our half hour is already over. It goes by so quickly. Thank you so much, Mike, for coming in and joining Andrew and I on Fitchburg Republican City Committee's Your Right to Know. And we thank you for watching Your Right to Know and sitting in here tonight with the FRCC. As we leave you, we want you to remember that your local city or town committee is your only grassroots organization that supports and holds dear your liberty and your constitutional rights and conservative values. We encourage you to join us. And why? Because to us, the GOP stands for growth, opportunity, and prosperity for all people, and because we always stand for freedom. Thank you and good night. And thank you again.
America, we stand for freedom. So let us all unite to yearn and strive for our republic that reflects our values, that preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values and preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might.